So in this segment, we're going to be discussing Starmer says reform or die to the NHS.
Fork in the road. And we have a choice about how it should meet those demands. Don't act and leave it to die. Raise taxes on working people, or reform to secure its future.
Raise taxes on the rich, maybe. Raise taxes on the 1% of earners. Maybe you could do that. Raise taxes on people making, I don't know, do a new tax on people making more than 100k. Raise capital gains tax to be in line with income tax. Maybe. Just maybe you can do that. I don't know. Is that asking too much?
Now, working people can't afford to pay more.
Can the rich?
So it's reform or die.
Oi, oi, oi. This guy, fam. This guy. People defend this geezer. Reform or die. It's just a complete joke. What kind of reforms they want to make, I don't know. But what I don't want them to do is go running back to the private sector, which they seem hell-bent on doing. This from Grace Blakely.
What we've seen with what has essentially been the privatization of the NHS in recent years is that it's been very inefficient. You've had, outsourcing companies being brought in that have been charging insane amounts of money for things like changing light bulbs. You've had private organisations being brought in to provide care, and they haven't performed particularly well. So I agree. We need to
today with bringing the private sector.
Yeah, well,
they did in a way.
When anyone ever bangs on about the privatisation of the NHS, I do get triggered because I would be.
Oh no, triggered. Oh no.
Supporting private companies carrying out NHS operations. And in fact, the government has brought in private companies to tackle the waiting list. In fact, it's not really been covered because...
It's because you weaken the NHS so much, and now you've given that money to private capital instead of giving it to the NHS, giving it back to the NHS for them to fix themselves. That's all that's happened. There are NHS staff who work in the private sector as well. Partly to make more money via, being agency staff or whatever. But this idea that, the NHS was in a bad state and the private sector had to come in, or the private sector were chosen to come in, is ridiculous. You can't break someone's leg and then be like, oh, I'm a hero, I'm giving you a walking stick. It's ridiculous.
There's a hell of a lot of news going on and nobody's really looked at this. There's a big company that's come in, I think, got 9 contracts to do this. But you're right. Under the Blair government, and I'm sure if you talk to...
So Blair privatisation was bad, but Conservative privatisation was good.
Absolutely cooked him with that one.
As I was about to say, under the Blair government, we had independent treatment centres, which were fantastic. And as a local MP, I saw them cut waiting lists dramatically.
Yeah, because you gave them a shit ton of money. Bro, it's not hard. You've given a private sector... They are going to help, but they're going to take most of that money in profit.
Until eventually the health unions campaign to get them out of the NHS.
I mean, we know that PFI was a disaster.
PFI was a disaster. That was
private finance.
This constant obsession.
Literally what he's talking about, PFI. He's saying, oh, look how great it was. And it's like, oh, no, I acknowledge it was a disaster.
That the NHS not only... the principle is that you get free care regardless of your income, but the idea that NHS services have to provide everything is completely wrong.
The reason for that...
But it's the way you draw the line then. And the problem is they draw the line at basic services, which the NHS should be able to cover. When it comes to this kind of stuff, austerity and whatever, we've seen Labour discuss budget cuts. This from Danny Blanchflower, an economist, saying, why would Labour be cutting public spending as the economy flatlines and public services collapse? I guess they failed to do any preparatory work at all, as far as I can see, in anything. What about defence, social care, regional policy? So now they're engaging in actions that are economically, politically and socially stupid. No wonder Prime Minister's approval ratings are collapsing. Richard Murphy and will oppose this nonsense. I think he said, meant to say, and I. And he talks about Osborne's main reason for austerity was to weaken the bargaining power of workers and make them more compliant. The argument about debt to GDP ratios, etc., were spacious. I think this stuff belongs in a different video, but the point is, as he mentions there, UK Labour is set on lowering the welfare of ordinary people further and lowering their life expectancy as they aren't fixing the NHS is appalling. And off the back of, PFI contracts, Starmer says rebuilding the UK means painful decisions, not just a lick of paint. Hurting poor, vulnerable people. PFI, outsourcing, privatisation, profiteering isn't the answer. Must redistribute wealth, income, and that's the key here. And that's the thing that Labour just simply aren't doing for whatever reason. When I saw Rachel Reeves come in as Chancellor, I was nervous. I didn't realise it would be that bad, but it's so much worse than I thought. It's genuinely a disaster. But anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.